Good afternoon, everyone. Time for part 5 of my coverage of FOFOA's silver article. What you are looking at is a American Silver Eagle, and I've been thinking about this coin lately, partly because of FOFOA's reference to the Silver Eagle and why would we look for an explanation elsewhere. I don't know if you remember that line, but a couple of ideas came to me. I've been mulling over that 50 million ounce amount in my head, and it's quite interesting when we go to our Wikipedia Silver Eagle article, and I don't know if any of you have this number. If you do, I'd appreciate it, but we don't have 2010's total, and we don't have the monthly total so far in 2011. We used to get monthly, I thought, so if anyone has that, I'd be interested in it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because as we approach, you see we hit 30 million in 2009. There's a couple important points I want to make here. One, if you remember, the Silver Eagles are required to source American silver. I believe that's in the law. Correct me if I'm wrong. Secondly, remember the number that we've been quoting, the 50 million ounces. 50 million ounces is the amount of silver that is actually physically delivered per year on the COMEX. So not only are, and also there's another number, I think it's 40 or 50 million, and that is the amount of silver that's mined in the United States per year. So very interesting numbers converging here at 50 million. We're going to be converging upon 50 million Silver Eagles. We're going to be looking at 50 million mines, 50 million ounces of silver mined in the United States, and 50 million ounces of silver delivered physically on the COMEX. Interesting numbers. Now, one of the thoughts that I had while thinking about that was, if you remember, I mentioned yesterday about how I believe that we're going to end up with an eventual war between the silver investors and the silver users. And the thought that came to my mind this morning is that I would guesstimate that the bulk of the 400 or 500 million ounces of silver that is used by the industrial users isn't actually used here anymore. In other words, it's probably used in China. So that brings up an interesting conjecture. How much of this silver that's being used in manufacturing in China is being sourced by American companies here and sent there, or being sourced by American companies there and bought overseas? It's just an interesting thing to speculate about with these numbers beginning to converge. So that's something to think about. Another thing I wanted to do with our 50 million ounce figure is just do a little simple math. Remember, before I'd referenced my point about, and we're going to see this in FOFOA's article, but there's quite a few mockers out there who are mocking the SLA and Max Kaiser's idea. And in a video in the past, I mentioned the number of subscribers and what they could do. So let's just look at some raw numbers. When I did total up the numbers of subs on those channels, we were getting near 50, and let's just say we somehow get 100,000. That's not a big number, so let's just say that that's roughly the strength right now of what the Silver Liberation Army would be worldwide. It may be high, it may be low, I don't know, but we'll just use it for informational purposes. So let's say we have 100,000, and those 100,000 in the Silver Liberation Army managed to buy 100 ounces of silver. Not too much, really, not too crazy, because a lot of us are purchasing rolls and bars and stuff like that, so that's not a wild estimate. Some have more money, some have less, so we'll just go with that. And that equals 10 million ounces. Now, some people would say, well, 10 million ounces, that's just a drop in the bucket. But if you remember our 50 million ounce figure, that's 20% of yearly supply. That's 20% of what's delivered physically on the COMEX. That's 20% of the Silver Eagles. That's a big number. So don't let people say that a tiny movement like the Silver Liberation Army can't have an impact. It can. When we're looking at numbers this small, a large number, or a small number even, of some people can make a difference. And I wanted to, before I jump into FOFA, cover a site that someone sent me. One of my viewers sent me a link to Provident Metals, and he had pointed out that there were a number of tigers available, so I wanted to point those out. I've actually got kind of loaded the boat before with tigers, and I'm kind of full up on tigers, so I just wanted to give that to somebody who is interested. I did come across some other interesting ones. They actually have a lot of coins here, and a lot of these are out of stock, but some of these are interesting. Here's the Grizzlies are out, and there's some rare maple leaf there. Now there are some of the older kookaburras I did notice were in stock. Now here's the koala is out of stock. Here's a 2005 kook for $45, and there's also a 2004 kook. So if you never got a chance to pick those up, that's not that bad of a price. It's above spot quite a bit, but remember, these are collector's coins. So this is a 1992 Australian kookaburra. Wow, that's crazy. And there's the wolf again, is out of stock. Some more kooks. We got our 2006 and our 2007. $29. That must be a real collectible one on that 2007. And the 1990s are out of stock. I really like this 2009. Here's our tiger. It's $45.45. I did a check on them. There was about 150 left or so. So if you do want those, this is another place you can source them. It's Provident Metals. Hopefully at some point I'll build up I'll get a connection on my page or something where I'm going to do a blog at some point, and maybe I'll put a place where I can link all of the suppliers of these coins that I like. And so we'll pursue that. Anyway, let's jump over to FOFOA and continue reading with the Silver Forum from Costada, and we were up to the exchange traded funds. So begin reading. The exchange traded funds are a segment of the market we should pay close attention to in our unfolding corner narrative. The ETFs that offer redemption in physical silver tend to have a minimum redemption quantity that is much higher than most small investors can easily afford. In most cases, the shares trade freely, but the metal in many of these ETFs sits still. Consequently, these ETFs add to the stock while increasing its tendency toward immobility, and they compete for the flow of silver. As Kitco reports here, ETFs have become a huge part of the silver market. The website for SLV shows that as of May 1st, 2006, the amount of silver in the trust was a modest 653 metric tons. Flash forward to Thursday, and the website showed a total holdings at 11,053 metric tons, or 355 million ounces, with total assets listed at $17 billion. Through April 21st, CPM Group put global silver holdings in 13 precious metal ETFs around 605 million ounces. For 2010, additions to global ETF holdings were 123 million ounces, Randstad reported. In 2009, ETF holdings rose by 155 million ounces. The ETF additions in 2010 represent 12.4% of total global supply of silver of 987 million ounces, including not only mine output but other sources such as recycling. Randstad reported much silver is consumed by industrial uses, excluding all fabrication demand. The amount of available silver was 142 million, meaning the ETF demand accounted for some 6/7 of this. SLV stands out from the other ETFs in three enormously important ways. Firstly, its structure and prospectus allow it to impact on both the physical and paper silver markets in ways that most other ETFs simply cannot. It's also vastly larger than any other silver ETF or ETP. Lastly, the SLV silver is literally both a stock and flow at the will of the authorized participants. To illustrate, you may have heard Saudi Arabia referred to as the swing producer in the oil market. The Saudis are said to have the spare capacity to keep supply and demand in balance. SLV can fill that same role in this market for physical silver. In this story, it does precisely that, with a slight twist. It is used procyclically by a corner operator to amplify volatility in both directions, up and down. Okay, I know that some observers confidently claim the SLV is just a paper facade with no actual physical silver. No amount of audits or bar lists will ever convince some of you otherwise. So be it. For those readers with an open mind, I invite you to consider the possibility, and I'm going to have to continue because I'm on call, so I will take it up next time with part 6, and we'll talk to you then.